States of America. And one nation. Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have anybody in the audience, in the audience that would like to make any comments? Oh, that's all. Who's on top of it? So we can just say. We need to see Peter and John. Thank you. Okay. Approval of the minutes, April 21. Okay, so we need a motion to accept.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from Monday, April 21.
Okay. Second, we need a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Correspondence.
Steve Thompson just provided his certificate of attendance at the Land Use Academy for 3 hours.
Okay.
And then the minutes from the Inland Wetlands Water Courses Commission were emailed to the commission, and the minutes from the zoning board of appeals.
Okay.
For your review.
Unfinished business. 81 RPR LLC Industrial Park Road excavation pit permit annual review. So you're from Boundary.
Yeah. For the record, John Felician Boundaries LLC. I'm here representing the applicant this evening. We've submitted as-built topographic survey plans dated January 2025 and are in receipt of a letter dated April 9th from your consulting engineer, Town Engineering. We are continuing to conduct the excavation in accordance with the approved plan from January 2024. I know there was a question at one point about a volume of material that had been removed from the past year. That volume was 4,500 cubic yards. I had responded to that in an email to Jim at some point during this last couple of months process. So this evening, we're asking the commission to make a finding that based on the January 2025 survey and the inspection dated May 9th from Town Engineering, that the activities are being conducted in accordance with the plan and extend the review period for an additional year for this application. All I have.
So you got. So, you know, when the reason why we asked, come in because we saw this and we had no feedback from anyone, so.
Yeah, I apologize for that. I missed the last meeting. I had 3 other night meetings that week and it just got away from me. I'm not even sure what happened. But yeah, I apologize for not being here at the last meeting.
Happens with.
It was actually fine because we wanted to get comment back from the town engineer. So,
Gotcha.
but we couldn't do anything with it anyway without that. So.
Perfect. Thank you. Do you have a copy of the town engineering report?
Yes,
Yes.
we do.
They inspected it on the 9th of May during a significant rain event, and did not find anything of concern. There.
Does anyone have any questions? Comments? Anything? No.
I have no questions.
Okay. At this point,
Does Jim have anything to add? Do you have anything to add?
No, I did provide, and I think if you guys got it in your packet, a copy of the, because one of the other things you guys had mentioned was, because I don't have a copy of the original, the only copy I have of the original conditions is actually on the original plan. So I did have that sent out to you guys with the original plan that has the conditions, the original conditions on them as well. Granted, when you print it out, it's pretty small, but.
no one has any objections, we have
I'll make a motion.
make motion for this.
I'll make a motion to, accept, the review documents and proceed without exception.
Second? Okay, all in favor? All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
New business.
I think we have any.
I just have
It's
a
not on the agenda.
more of a question.
That would be my question is, I'm not sure if, you wanna ask this gentleman only because I know there was no new business on the agenda. I'm not sure what.
I'm doing a small subdivision up the road. I just have a question about a driveway. Was I supposed to put that in? I was just told it was a town meeting. And then I could, if that's not possible, then it was just a question that I had about a driveway that we're trying to put in. I mean, if I have to get a different meeting.
Have you
that's fine.
spoken to the zoning enforcement officer yet?
Not about this issue, no.
Okay, that might be the place to start.
Yeah, that would be
Okay,
really the best place to start.
yeah, that's
If
fine.
need, then you have to come back.
Okay, yeah, that's not a problem at all.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
the zoning enforcement officer office hours are Wednesday from 12 to 5? Or 1 to 5?
Yeah,
12 to 6.
2 to 5, something like that. yeah.
12 to 6. 12 to 6 on Wednesday.
on Wednesday? Okay,
Mr. Chamberlain, would you mind if I asked him what his question was? Sure. Because sometimes the first selectman or the selectmen have something to say about driveways. What is your question, sir?
my question is that we have a proposed driveway to go in at a certain point on the property. But, we had to put a shared driveway in for 3 other building lots previous. And I was seeing if we were able to use that shared driveway to come off of that next building lot,
So
and it abuts.
I'm gonna refer you to the zoning enforcement officer also, because I think
Okay.
that nothing that I want to act on tonight. that's-
Yeah, yep, yeah, and I mean, I have a couple other questions for
John-
him anyway. 'cause-
John Miskowski would be the person to ask those questions.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's the best place to start. I mean,
Okay.
we'll give you direction on
Yeah.
where
Yeah,
to
I'm
go
not
from there,
sure,
whether-
because we had to give a piece of property to, CL and Key also. So there's an easement through it, so I don't know if I have to go through them in order to do this as well, so. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, definitely a starting point.
Thank you very much.
New business. Okay. Do we have a CEO report?
Yeah, I didn't.
You got it.
Yeah, come on.
You want me to
Want to see it?
come?
Anything crazy?
Just.
Okay.
Yeah, that's. I put notes on.
I can read it if you want.
Give us the 3 quick notes.
It's, let's see, it's 2 pages.
You don't have a copy?
I can go with copies.
You don't see it? Already read it.
The one thing I didn't read before.
I mean, I guess from my perspective, there's only a couple of things that I noted in here that it looks like there's some issues with the Sterling Hill Estates development, which I believe that's the, and I know previously there were some concerns regarding, with the past, that there were some additional, it seemed like there were either some additional, either buildings that were being constructed or buildings being constructed that weren't in the same location as they were previously planned at one point in time. So I'm not sure if those are the same complaints that are still being investigated.
If you're thinking of the same one that I've had, I believe to talk to someone on, I can never think of the names of those streets, but the ones off to the side of the, Julian,
Anne, Julian, John.
okay, someone who purchased a house on John Street, recently, is, I think, at least from what I saw, was complaining about the new house that was built directly behind him, higher up on the very last circle, which I'm not sure is the name yet.
John is the last.
Okay, well,
one
then we're
that's-
talking about Julian,
So, but they loop around.
right,
So John would be, you go on and then there's houses around.
Right.
Circles. So John is the top one.
okay, well, this
That's what they're doing.
individual that purchased the house on the lower one,
Julian.
Julian. And here's a house being built directly behind him, but a considerable higher elevation on John Street, which apparently looks like the erosion is coming right down the hill into his backyard. And the answer that John gave him when he questioned it was that this is a homeowners association, you need to contact the contractor. This, because they have purposely avoided subdivision rules and regulations when we did that whole process up there. So we really don't have a lot to say about that sort of thing, whereas his issue is with the contractor who's building the house. And I drove up there just to see it myself, and if I were in that house, I'd be worried too, because you got this big steep gravel banking behind his house, and then there's another house sitting there. I mean, it looks like there's a real potential for erosion, but that's up to the contractor, because it's nothing, it's really not up to us at all. And John made that very clear to him, he has to go to the contractor, or to the homeowners association, one or the other.
Okay.
The other one that I,
Homeowners Association, that doesn't apply to planning and zoning? Is that what you were saying?
Not that, they don't apply, the subdivision regulations, as I understand it, don't apply to them, because they purposely avoided that, so they could become, and they didn't wanna go through the process of Sterling subdivision regulation, so they made a homeowners association, which makes them responsible for all of that.
Huh.
Is right. Only trouble is, a good many of the folks who live in that area don't know that. They know they're part of the homeowners association, but they don't know the ramifications of it.
So,
yeah, it was built prior to zoning, so, in that instance, plus. I believe when it comes to erosion sedimentation control, it specifically deals, ENS. Specifically deals with, at least the way that it applies in other towns that I work with, ENS of projects that are over a half acre or more. But it also specifically applies to applications that involve a subdivision. So since this wasn't a subdivision at the time, erosion sedimentation control from the town perspective wouldn't apply. So that's where it ended up falling on them, because they would not have had to. That doesn't necessarily mean that they don't need to be following best management practices from that standpoint, but it's still, it is the contractor's responsibility in those, in that instance. So it is something that is very difficult for the town to, unless there's imminent wetland issues or something like that, where wetlands can step in and enforce something, it is difficult for the town to enforce something in that situation.
I thought John gave you very good advice.
The one that I noticed was the Gibson Hill Campground, where it does look like John has met with them, and did do kind of a full compliance review, because they are a grandfathered, type of use there. The one thing that I did notice that I'd be curious and may just have a curiosity question with him about is where it does talk about any expansion requires a variance from the zoning board of appeals, is what he says here. As opposed to another, I guess, avenue would be any expansion. Maybe they could also do that through a special permit through the commission, where if they wanted to do something, they could come in through you guys and get a special permit for that expansion as opposed to a variance. Although I would say the variance may be a much, depending on what it is, and depending on whether they could get a variance for whatever it happens to be, maybe a simpler, faster avenue for them, but I would think that that was also the purpose for us putting in that regulation as well, so.
Are you speaking specifically to winter use?
That as well as
Oh,
other expansions of the,
like a physical expansion?
right,
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Mr. Chairman, one comment on that Gibson Hill issue. It doesn't really affect you people, but just as long as you had the two people from that campground group here last week, last month. I had a meeting with the, director of the Northeast District Department of Health, because they needed to talk to him. He met up there with somebody from the Connecticut Department of Health as well. And he came to see me afterwards with a kind of a, synopsis of that conversation. Basically, what they have done is they were trying to get the Board of Health to sign off on additional campground, several additional sites, when they didn't really have a plan in mind how to handle that. They have some infrastructure in the ground. They have some septic, they have a well system, but apparently there's very little on paper as far as the Northeast District knows about. So without having the size of the septic tank, the amount of septic fields, and they don't have this information, they told them, you're gonna have to come up with a comprehensive engineered plan before we can even think about granting you more space in terms of more sites. Because what you have now may not be adequate for what you have, let alone add dozens of more sites. So that, basically, he kind of tossed it back into their court, if you will, and that's where he left it. So that they're gonna have to come up with some far more substantial engineered plans than they have at the moment. So I just thought I'd bring you up to date on that particular part of it. If there's anything more comes of it, I will be glad to let you know.
Do you know how long that campground's been there?
I don't, John, I'll bet you do.
No, I don't. I was wondering how old the septic tank system was.
Well, I have no idea. And thing is, nothing is on paper. So I thought that if somebody had applied for a septic tank, a septic permit, within the last 15 or 20 years,
Have something,
then you'd have something on record. They have nothing on
Department
record.
of Health should have something on record. It's
Exactly.
filed, yeah.
So it leads to a lot of question marks in your, as to just what's going on. I'm not blaming the owners, the current owners. I think they're saddled with something that they may not have been aware of before,
Right.
but I dare say they've made aware of it now. So I don't know where that all goes, but they have been told by both Connecticut Department of Health and by the local Senate, the local health department, that they're gonna have to find something far more suitable and substantial than they have now.
do you know if the 125 RV sites that are stated here as confirmed, are those confirmed with the health department as 125 sites, or are these just from a zoning perspective confirmed?
Honestly, I don't know, Jim.
Okay, I was just curious. I wasn't-
He just let them understand, they can't begin to add to what they have until they can figure out what they have already.
How far does the health department go back? Did they say, or? I mean, how long's it been there, that campground?
Well, that's what John just asked.
It's gotta be at least 60 years.
I don't know, frankly. I would say it's gotta go back at least 30 years.
Oh, it's older
You
than
gotta
that,
have something.
because the Taylors used to own that, and
I can't hear you, Judy.
the Taylors used to own that, and I went to school with them, and it's gotta be at least 60 years.
Close to the 40 years?
Closer to
It's gotta be
60.
at least 10 years.
60 years.
60, yeah.
It's gotta be at least 10 years. Closer to,
Long time.
closer to 60.
Okay.
50.
Will that take it back to the mid-60s of last,
Late 1900s.
what's that?
Late 1900s. Mid
1900s. Mid-20th century.
It's been a while.
Few years.
more than 30 years.
But they didn't have 125 sites at that time, so they had to,
Well, they've been adding on to it.
yeah, they're adding on to it, so you would think that if they started with a 2,000 gallon, septic system, then if they added 30 more, they gotta go with more septic. And it would be in the health department if they had
If they did it.
applied the application.
Did it legal.
We'll have to treat it the same, depending on what they come in and request, we'll just have to treat it the same as every other application. What do you have now? Site plan review, we need a site plan of what's there now. Quantities count, we need to see health department, approvals. So they'll need documentation on that side, and then we move forward and see what,
We can do.
help them through the process, that's all. Yeah. So that we can review it and understand what's there, because I have no idea what's there. I've never been in there, driven past it 1,000 times. Couldn't tell you how many sites are there, how far down the hill it goes,
It goes down a ways.
Yeah.
It does. Yeah. For some reason, I recall something about septic being done there for some reason. I don't know if they were fixing the problem or whatever. This goes back many years. Probably when I first joined the board. But I don't remember specifics.
Apparently no one else does either.
It was something they were fixing or expanding it. Okay.
Subject, well, off of this specific subject question, is that I heard the other campground has also been bought, the Riverbend. Is it the same people then?
I
I have
haven't
no
seen any
idea.
documentation.
Okay, I just heard.
I saw that, but we've not seen anything on Riverbend.
Yeah,
I don't know that that was sold. I know Gibson Hill did, but I'm not aware of Cinco selling it.
80 Potter Pond Road. He's looking for the variance.
This was, the first one was here like a month or two ago? Was here a month or two ago?
Yeah, he was here.
And this is, I think there's some, meeting tomorrow, is that what you're gonna talk about?
There's, you have a town meeting tomorrow? No.
What's
But
that?
ZBA.
Yes, I think this was, I'm not sure, because I don't remember,
ZBA, I think and I'm not sure why those got sent to you as well. That says ZBA has a public hearing.
I saw it in the newspaper.
Yeah, that's.
Right.
27th.
Right, it's the 27th, I think.
27th.
The zoning board of appeals has a public hearing
Yeah.
for a variance request.
The CEO had wrote a letter also about the, I don't know if you've seen it or not, under the ZBA.
Yeah, so that's, at the ZBA meeting next week, they're gonna, that's what the meeting is about. Getting
I still don't know why they keep calling it rectangle. It's gotta be a square.
No, it's a rectangle, I know, it's only, it says rectangle.
It's a rectangle,
It says
but
rectangle.
a square, a 150 by 150 square has to fit into the rectangle.
Yeah.
It's sort of.
Basically.
Yeah, it just basically has to be a rectangle with a minimum 150 by 150 square that fits into it.
Got it, okay, I didn't read the word. All right,
Yeah, there's two dimensions, like one has to fit within the other.
yeah.
That's it.
Okay, back to audience comments. Ready?
We made all the comments we're gonna make, I think.
Okay, other business. Regulation priorities. We got the, I mean,
One of the things you guys talked about a little bit, or we were talking about a little bit last, month was the open space aspect. And one of the things you guys wanted to go back to and look at was the open space stuff. So I, kicked my water around, but, so I printed out just your open space section for you.
4-11.
Not that you have to discuss it, I'll get into deep, conversation about it tonight. You guys want to? Read? Yeah, I already read. Yeah. Thanks. Thank you. Sure. Because what it does talk about a little bit is just the, it gets into a little bit about the, and one of the things that I found somewhat interesting, it talks about open space and the state open space that the state owns, town-owned open space. And a couple of open space parcels, just a few of them, that, it references as conservation priority parcels. And, one of them the town already owns, which is that one that's, kind of caught between, I think it's, if you know, it's the one that's to the right side, kind of between, I wanna say it's Providence, is it Providence Road? It's between 14A and 14. Providence Road. So it's that one that's kind of looks like a horseshoe, it's got the little,
Are on page 4-12?
yeah. The ones that are in the bright yellow are the ones that are conservation priorities. Because what I tried to look at was, when you're looking at open space, what you're trying to imagine is, the land that you would be looking to acquire, I would imagine. So when you're doing a subdivision, it would be, all right, it would be if someone was subdividing the property in that particular location, whether or not you'd be determining whether you'd want open space or whether you'd want a fee in lieu of open space. And you only had those, 4 or 5 parcels identified at this stage. And what I found interesting was you already own one of them, which was that one. The parcel to the south there, I believe is actually, is that Radical Roots?
Newport Road?
Yes. I believe, is the one to the south. The other two up along the line, one of them is actually owned by Tilcon. That is the gravel, I think the one that the gravel operation is on. And the one to the north is privately owned, I want to say by Michael Davis. Is who it's listed by right now, is the owner. I'm not sure how all of these were really chosen. It doesn't say when you read through the document how they were chosen.
Excuse me. I'm just curious. This is by the state?
No.
No, this is by the town.
This is the plan of conservation development.
conservation development,
It took years.
yeah, some of it was zoning and, yeah, I think zoning, the last, yeah.
It was required by the state,
Through us.
required by the state for every time.
So what is specifically, what is a conservation priority? What does that mean?
Basically, what they're looking at here, I believe, is they looked at, and the way I'm interpreting this is they're looking at the land masses that are owned by the state, owned by the town, and I'm interpreting these open space corridors, which are the areas that are in black, and I believe what they're trying to do is they're looking at, trying to create these corridors mainly through areas, if this happened to be, more of an aerial. I think what you would see within these, black areas these are, mostly forested sections. So these are areas of undisturbed, undeveloped, and what it appears is it's more like unbroken up, for the lack of a better term, people's backyards. So these are areas that are undeveloped, large chunks of land that are like someone's back 40 that does not have frontage,
Doesn't have front.
that potentially probably will not be developed at some point in time, that the town may have a better chance of getting either a conservation easement on or some type of protection over a wildlife corridor or something that will protect open space to create some type of a greenway that would connect some of these green parcels to each other, so that you don't have a patch of open space up here and a patch of open space down here. Which is, I believe, what the objective here is. I'm not sure what the green proposed linkages, green straight lines really are, unless those are more for trail system. And that's why they're making them more linear, that maybe the proposal is in the future to maybe just create just a trail that might connect these for recreational purposes. Whereas the other darker open space corridor is more for habitat and things like that, where it would be more of a conservation, larger,
Who does know exactly what this means? Is there a person or?
well, that's the thing, I don't think, and I think if you look at some of these pages, and I think that was some of the concerns when you read through this,
Yeah.
is that, one of the issues is that there, and it basically tells you, is that Sterling doesn't really have an open space plan. There wasn't,
Right, it says, it has a lot of references to like, this should be done and this could be done.
right, that there is no
Hasn't
conservation
really been done
commission,
yet.
so there isn't really a overall plan for open space. So what has happened, even though you have, what is it, you have some open space that the town may own, and there is a lot of state open space and town open space, it's kind of been collected haphazardly. There isn't an overall goal, there isn't one group, there isn't a, land trust in town that kind of, like a lot of towns do have either Wyndham Land Trust, Joshua's Land Trust, other organizations in town that are actively pursuing, open space and have a mission or a goal to either create, whether it be horse trails, whether it be whatever it is. Sterling doesn't necessarily have that one particular group or champion, I guess, doing that. And that is another thing that's commented on within this plan. So I guess that's one of the, open space, one of the things that it talks about is that you have the Last Green Valley, I guess, which is kind of an overall Eastern Connecticut kind of group that, that does market itself as a, conservation organization. And it does kind of latch onto that group and kind of its philosophy. But from a town perspective, you have the Moosup Valley Trail, but there isn't really a overall town perspective or a town goal, which is, I guess somewhat, I don't want to say interesting, but somewhat, from a perspective of trying to set a goal for how you guys, as the Planning and Zoning Commission, want to deal with your open space requirements within your subdivision guidelines. It kind of makes it a little difficult. if the town itself doesn't really have a goal in general, other than my understanding being that previously you required open space in every subdivision. But for what purpose? And
So
for
the
what?
way I see this is, when this was written, there was a deadline, it was required by the state.
Yes.
To submit this.
Mhm.
So I think that this was completed to meet the state requirements
Mhm.
and didn't really go any further. So I think at this point, it's our job to look at this when we see a subdivision application come in. And we just say, okay, is it within some of these delineated areas described in this? And if so, that's where we should push for an open space requirement. And this is our reasoning, we're following this objective. Yes, it's loosely defined, and, you know, when you read through this whole section, there's a lot of this should be done, that shall be done, but not that it has actually been calculated or figured out. So I think we just loosely use this as a guideline when reviewing a subdivision application. And I think that helps make a determination, do we want open space designated in the subdivision, or do we want a fee in lieu of?
The fee in lieu of gives us money to buy something. I don't know who puts this map together.
I mean, you can kind of understand the reasoning as Jim described it. It's basically like backyard. It's not saying, let's take road frontage property and try to make it open space. It's
Right.
Let's keep the property that's landlocked in between two widely spaced corridors of roadway and try to maintain green within the middle of that. Because if you're trying to grab roadfront property for open space, that's, you know, that's expensive property. Whereas designating a piece in the back of someone's property as open space is much easier on the applicant and more conducive to actually doing a development. So it kind of makes sense from that standpoint. At least that's how I understand it. Because this wasn't written to go back to the authors and say, hey, what do you think about this? Or why did you want us to do that? This is written for us to be deciphered under its own merit, not by the individuals who actually crafted it. At least that's how I see it.
And one of the other things I did mention to you guys was that I did say that I would show you kind of an example, because one of the things that we also talked about a little bit was how the way that your current open space one was written kind of was just the opposite a little bit of how it was written, so that kind of required the fee in lieu of, or it wasn't, instead of authorizing the fee in lieu of. So this one just happens to be Eastford only because I work with Eastford. It's a little more, probably a little stricter, but,
This one's ours, the first one's ours.
no, that is actually Eastford.
Yeah.
This is kind of redrafted yours,
Okay.
right here, the one in red. And that's just flip-flopping the language. So that it begins with the language that says that all of your subdivisions require land to be dedicated. And then afterwards it says, you may authorize the fee in lieu of. But it starts out with, like, all you guys are going to with the red. Okay.
There's 4 pages written out.
Right, it should be 4 pages.
It's 4 pages. These go together.
Yeah, we start with,
They go together.
it's basically every page, is section 8.
So I have 29, 30, 30.
That's the other.
All of section 8 in your subdivision regulations.
There's 28, 29, 30.
No, you have an extra comment?
I don't get it all. I don't know one page.
Oh, they only give you the 1 page?
Yeah, you can only have one, two. That's right.
This one is just Eastford, because Eastford, and mainly what I gave you Eastford for is it's like Eastford does tie it directly into their P O C D objectives. And I think that's the one thing I don't remember seeing specifically in yours, where we could tie it directly into the P O C D so that it does give language that ties right into those pages. Gonna mix up all my copies, otherwise I would give you guys more.
Thank you, Jim, I think.
But the one thing that makes it a little simpler for you in yours as opposed to Eastford, Eastford does also say that they only require, open space in subdivisions of 4 or more lots and, 20 acres or more. So if it doesn't have,
And or? 4 lots,
it either has to
4
be,
20 acres, or 4 lots and 20 acres?
I believe, or. So what happens is if you're doing a 1 lot subdivision and it's 20 acres, they require open space.
Yeah.
Because they had one up on, I don't know if any of you are familiar with it, they had basically a 1 lot subdivision. And the guy owned, and it's up on Center Pike on the border of Union. And he, he had a 60-acre lot. And he carved off 3 acres for some other guy. And he had to do a conservation easement for 7 acres. It happened to work out because he did have a natural diversity database area along a stream that he could put a conservation easement on that happened to border the town line or something like that, that he had no issues with. He just wanted to make sure that it wasn't publicly accessible. He was just gonna put some signs up, said this is the conservation area. Just gonna leave it alone, he wasn't gonna touch it.
So who does that piece of land belong to now?
It still belongs to him. He still owns it. He's just putting a conservation easement on it because it's a natural diversity database area. And it's just not developable, not.
What exactly is a conservation easement, what is that?
Basically, conservation easement is similar to any kind of an easement, and then it specifically is written out into the easement that goes onto the land records, specifically what can happen in there. So you could have written to the easement that it has to be kept in its natural state. You could also have written into it that, there are only certain activities that could happen there. Maybe it could only be used for hiking. It could only be used for,
So does the easement open it to the public?
it could say that, could say it was open to the public.
But it's not automatic basis.
Right, it's not automatically, no. No, it is not. Sometimes, some towns do require that, open space, any open space, has some access to the public.
If it was written like that, does the person that owns that piece of land also own that, the piece of land that was open space also?
Yes, he still owns the open space.
Yep.
He just has to let access to the public, if that's the way it was written.
If that's the way.
If that's the way it's written.
And the only places it's kept track of is in the land records, so if somebody did a title search or something, they would find them.
Yes.
So if it was like us sitting here 20 years from now, it would be just like the campground septic system, nobody would know anything about it. Cause you surely wouldn't go digging through the property records to figure out where easements and stuff are.
Well, it depends.
Unless you're buying.
Right, unless you're buying, it could be recorded in there, it could be recorded, it all depends on what that public space could be used for. If the public space is because there's trails on it, someone could have those trails mapped, and it could be on a public trail site or something like that,
But
or.
most likely, if all the towns require this kind of stuff, there's all this.
And that-
Nobody knows anything.
And you're
about.
you're totally right, and that is why a lot of towns don't
Require.
like to have little bits and pieces of
Sounds
open
good.
space all over the place unless,
It sounds kind of foolish.
right, unless they have a plan or they have an active program where they're putting all these little pieces together to make something.
So if we don't want to have all these little pieces,
Then
why?
what
why
the
are
towns
we-
do, then what some towns will do is they'll do, okay. So because we're requiring open space on every parcel, and we get a subdivision and we have to require open space, we say, well, we look at this and there really isn't anything here that is valuable to us as a town. We're authorizing you to give us a fee in lieu of open space. So we basically they look at the overall, basically that's when you take it, you get an appraised value of the overall undeveloped land. And you authorize them to pay a fee or a fee in lieu of open space. So what will happen is essentially, if it's a 2-lot subdivision, for example, in Eastford, they had in the Ashford area, they had, I don't know, 5 or 6 lots that were developed. And I think the fee in lieu of ended up being like $942 per lot or something like that. So when the subdivision is put in place, there's a lien put on each lot so that when the lot actually gets sold, that fee gets paid to the town. So $942 gets paid to the town, it gets put in an open space fund.
So it's not the value of the land.
It's the,
The fee, how is that determined?
well, it's determined by a separate appraiser, or by an appraiser that is determined by the commission and the developer at the time of subdivision or agreed upon, but it's based on the value of the land before it's developed. So it's not like on a building lot, I believe, it's on like so it's not like the crazy, it's not on a huge value, but it's, so that's determined prior to, so they determine the value, it's divided by the number of lots. So they're all basically, I believe, the same, is the same lot value per se. And then that lien is placed on each lot. And it's as each lot goes up for sale, the one thing that's difficult about those are you have to have someone, again, as each one goes up for sale, it's gotta get tracked and you gotta make sure that fee gets paid. Usually, as long as that lien is placed in the land records correctly, most banks and most realtors, lawyers are gonna catch it, and they're gonna make sure that that gets paid at the time of the closing. And that fee has to go into a dedicated fund. I'm not sure if that's how yours all got, I think you have what, 106 or something like that? I have it on a post-it somewhere. How you guys got built up to the point that you guys are, in your fund at this point, or? But essentially, that way, once your fund gets built up to a certain point, you could purchase a property that would be in a location that may be more beneficial to the town, as opposed to having little bits and pieces all over the place. If for some reason, a parcel that, hey, the town says, this would really benefit the town to have this piece of open space because it abuts another piece that we already own, and we would be able to do something because it's next to the river, or it's on waterfront, and it's right next to a park, and we already own this, and we could put a boat launch, we could do this, we could do that with it. Then you may actually have enough money that you could either buy it yourself outright, or it would be enough to leverage state funds through a state grant or something like that to be able to actually do something with it.
Okay, bogged down, and I want to know more about how we determine that. Because I'm just wondering if that'll actually stop people from subdividing if they can't afford to pay it. Does that type of thing happen? What happens? It is a minimal.
No,
fee.
you know.
And because the fee comes out at the point of sale of the property, so it's not like they're paying that fee, although some big developers come out and they may pay that fee up front because they know they're gonna, or they may be developing the lots themselves. They may be the ones actually building all the houses and everything else, so they may be speculative builders or something like that, so they may pay the fee, build the house and sell it. But others, because the fee comes out when you sell the lot, plus when it's in a situation where, like
Really,
Mr.
you're just
Grillo,
you're
or
passing-
where you're doing something and you're building for, or you're subdividing for a family member, or if you're subdividing for agricultural purposes or for other reasons, there are exemptions to the open space requirement, so.
Up to 5 acres though. It
No.
says here, it says subdivision of less than 5 lots.
5 lots, not 5 acres.
5 lots, okay, so. Like my subdivision, it's 1 lot. or
Right.
acres, Right?
Right.
1 lot, right? So, give an example, the fellow up, I'm not gonna, there's a subdivision going on now in process up the street, 26 acres. So, he's taking off, say, 13 acres, he's gonna have an open space in that 13 acres. up to 15%?
Is it for a child?
Well, it's more than 5, it's more than, okay,
No, it's
say
by
lots,
lots, it's
By
not by
lots.
acres.
So the acres is a lot.
Acres doesn't matter,
So
if it's
because
for,
one
if it's
lot-
for a family member, it doesn't matter how many acres it is.
Okay, so it's a lot.
It's by lot.
I just wanna make sure I got that clear.
Yep.
Okay, I'm reading it here.
So the gentleman that was in here earlier tonight, we perhaps we'll have to figure this all out when he comes back.
Well, I think he already has a subdivision. I think his lot, the impression I got was his lots were already subdivided. His question was more in lines of, he's trying to determine
Where the
whether or not he could utilize
Okay,
another driveway. So I think his question is gonna be more of an issue of how many lots can utilize a common driveway.
okay.
I think it's gonna be more of his issue, because I'm not sure if there's a limitation in town. Because a lot of towns will say you can only have 3 residents, or 3 houses can only utilize 1 common driveway or something like that. So my guess is gonna be more of that kind of a question for him.
Is it within its regulations?
I don't know where.
So, in terms, you asked a question about the fee. What, based on,
Yeah, I don't know if we're handling that either. What is the fee based on? How is that determined?
So by statute, if you look at, section, in your regulations. I gave away all my 8 point whatever, but I'm gonna find right here. Section 8 point, it tells you exactly how the fee is determined in section 8.
2C. 8.32C, I think we're in.
Yeah, 8.31. Eight point three three. So if you read through 8.33, payment, the method of payment of any fees under this section shall be one of the following two options. The applicant at his option may submit the entire fee in one lump sum prior to filing of the subdivision Mylars with the town clerk. Or the applicant may elect to submit a fraction of such payment, the numerator of which is 1, and the denominator of which is the number of approved building lots in the subdivision.
How do you say we determine the fee?
8.3.1.
That's wrong. I'm not sure.
The amount of such fee or combination of fee and the fair market of land transferred shall be equal to no more than 10% of the fair market value of the land to be subdivided prior to the approval of the subdivision. So basically, you're looking at the raw land before it's subdivided. So it's the fair market value of the land.
The land like the
So if you have 28.
subdivision or the land that he would, the person would give.
So whatever the fair market value, if you have 20 acres, like you said, whatever the value of that 20 acres is, and then you take
Say it's $100,000.
10%.
It'd be $10,000.
$10,000 divided by the number of lots.
Divided into 4, that'd be $2,500 per lot.
Yep,
Now, what if the portions that are not buildable
Doesn't matter,
of the 20 acres?
It's total vacancy acreage. Doesn't matter.
doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
It's the value.
that would be
of the
taken
raw
into
land.
account when they did the appraisal.
Value of the land, but even though it's not buildable?
That would be taken into account during the appraisal part.
Before the subdivision.
So whoever does the appraisal would take that into account.
Yeah, oh, okay. Oh, so,
That's a number for somebody.
But that's basically what would happen, is then when that person goes to sell the lot, what's a buildable lot going for in the town of Sterling?
well, one lot, 2 acres is approximately 60 grand. Roughly $60,000.
$6 grand.
Huh?
Maybe $6,000.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
No.
Well, no, it'd only be $2,500 off of that 60, because it's before it's subdivided.
the 60 grand would be the value after it's subdivided.
Because you're looking at it as raw land,
Right.
Yeah,
Well, you wouldn't know what the fee would, because you wouldn't.
right, because you wouldn't know what it was as raw land, but potentially it would only be like $2,500 off of, theoretically.
So if you take the value of the raw land, that 20 acres is worth $100,000. So that's 10% of that is $10,000. Then if you have 4 lots, it's $2,500 per lot. If you get 10 lots out of it, then each one is only $1,000. So you take that total amount divided by the number of lots, regardless of what the end lots end up being worth. So you might end up with one lot worth 80,000. You're still, if you have 4 lots, one lot's worth 80,000, you're gonna get 2,500. One lot's worth 20,000, you're still gonna get 2,500. If there's 4 lots.
And now we would determine who gets to pay the fee versus who donates the land based on our plan.
Yes.
So a guy selling couldn't say, I'd rather pay the fee than give you land?
Well, in theory, this is my understanding of how it works. In theory, you can authorize someone to pay, but, and this is at least how I always understood it, was even though you authorize them to, I don't know if they necessarily, in most instances, they usually will go with whatever the commission wishes, only because they want their approval for the most part. I,
I'll be honest with you, I just, I'm new with this and I've
Yeah.
been around the open land stuff, but it seems to me that we're just stealing people's land.
No, they still own it. You're not taking their land, they
The-
still own
the
it.
open
All
land
you're,
is
all you're
still-
saying is there's one portion of your development that you can't develop.
And they still own.
They
it.
determine.
they still own the land.
There may be a section of wetlands that they can't build on anyway, some unbuildable piece they can't, they say
So
that's,
it's-
So
that's.
it's not public, do we have? do we-
It depends, like, right, there are
There's
some,
easement.
there are some towns, and this is where, to me, it gets really. Because there are some towns that will say. The open space you give us has to be buildable, like you're saying, where we don't want the open space to be wetlands. Or steep slopes, or, cause this is what Woodstock did. Woodstock did, we want 50% of your buildable land has to be open space.
Our P O C D doesn't say anything about that.
Exactly.
Our P O C D is geared more towards creating greenway with a possible, like, nature path. So we're not looking for buildable land, we're not looking to develop
fact,
something for the town.
In fact, your P O C D specifically actually says that you should be trying to preserve
Trees, habitat, that's.
wetlands.
Yeah.
Steep slopes near wetlands and those types of things, are the things, are like riparian buffers, stuff like that, so that you're protecting those wetland corridors. And it specifically says within your subdivision regulations. So to me, that's, yours is saying just the opposite of what you're getting at, whereas there are towns who are taking the approach of using the open space section as trying to make it so that people can't build by taking their buildable land. Which is kind of the approach that I believe some towns like Woodstock did do in the past. They have since kind of reversed that.
Can you explain when you say? To his point, Jason said that the owner still owns the land,
On the problem.
but we keep saying we wanna take the land, so I think things are getting confused in translation.
Right, the right, I guess what I'm saying is that
So that they're not really taking.
there's different ways, because there's also another section in here that says, the dedication of space, open space. Because there's different ways of dedicating that open space. In some manner, the person who owns it could say, all right, I'm dedicating open space because they could actually say, I'm giving it to a land trust. So they could give it to a land trust, or they could keep it and just put a conservation easement on it where they still own it. Or they could give it to a homeowners association, or
So they put it,
they could give it to or they could put an easement and put the town as
so
the
really, there's like it's an open-ended.
easement on it.
whatever.
There's different ways of dedicating the open space. And those are outlined, I believe, in section 8.
And all of that, whatever that easement is, to care, that when they sell that property, they're also selling this piece that's open.
With the
space.
easement on it.
With the easement.
Yep, it's usually in perpetuity, it's basically how it's usually written.
To be honest with you, the only subdivision I remember, we didn't want open space. So the developer, if you're putting in 10 lots, he's just gonna tack it onto the price, you don't
Right.
care.
Yeah. Well,
So
pretty much anyway.
why do we want, like, an acre or something like that we can't do anything with? or
Right.
No one's gonna want to even go see.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea is just to maintain trees and.
Well, especially if you're just putting an easement on it.
On
if it's
on the
an
back
easement.
40, like Jim said.
Right.
Some green space on the back 40 that doesn't get.
Well, thank you,
That
that makes
remains
more
natural.
sense to me, I'm sorry if I'm holding things up, asking these questions, but
Good questions. Good questions.
I mean, that is something that, you bring up a very good point, because that is something that within your regulation, usually, and I think if you look at the Eastford regs, the Eastford regs get into detail in section 4, method of disposition, where it lists 9, I think, different methods, where it goes to perpetual dedication to the town, dedication to the state, dedication to a land trust, homeowners association, conservation easements, recreation easement to the state, conveyance to an agricultural easement. And I don't think any of those things are referenced within your regulations as to how that is actually done, or methodologies that are, which may be something that should be referenced in there, or added into the regulations as to how someone can, if they are doing the land dedication.
Thanks for rewording. Yeah. Saying dedicated, so, cause it's gonna be.
I think what we're looking at is updating.
Yeah.
Some pieces to clarify this, so that anybody reading this doesn't have to ask the same questions that we just asked. I think that's our objective, right?
Makes sense.
Well, I don't think we're ready to change it yet.
No, I wanna go back, I wanna go read all this stuff,
We're just.
Yeah.
and then pick out some pieces that I think we should add, and, you know, and then we can,
You wanna
have
do
Jim,
that?
then we can have Jim rewrite it.
All right, just remember the board has decision on collecting money instead of taking land.
All right, I'm talking about, like Jim saying, with like method of disposition, you know, I think we should outline some of these things in ours, so that people aren't asking the same
And you
questions.
couldn't say taking lands.
Taking
Yeah,
Because that's the way people
Yeah, like
normally say
That's
it.
my fault, right, you're right.
Yeah, reviewing the word dedication
We'll
and,
talk about it next meeting, okay? All right,
yeah, I think we can clean up ours a little bit or make it more clear to anybody reading it. I mean, this doesn't come across our path a lot. But, I mean, look what's happening in Plainfield, they're subdividing and developing everywhere at the moment, so is that gonna flow over to our side at some point? Who knows, but
someday
we
maybe.
should probably be a little better prepared in case it goes away. Spring Pillow is gonna run out of land in Plainfield at some point. Is he coming here next or what?
Maybe. Who knows? All right. So what about minimum lot size?
The other one with the minimum lot size one is, that we did talk about was, I did, you wanted me to put this all into the actual document, so what I did was I pulled out. That was the accessory dwelling. I added a definition. I only printed the pages that had changes.
So the blue is proposed?
Yeah, for some reason, when I did the,
It's not red.
when you change the doc.
Your track changes.
Right, I changed it first time and it was red. But then when I went in and did it the second time, the second person becomes blue, and I was the second person apparently again. So. The changes are more or less the same, but I just put it into the actual document where it would go, so that you guys get a better idea. The definition. I tried to keep it simple and I tried to make it so that it would match 6.03, where, so that there wasn't any confusion between what an accessory apartment and an accessory dwelling unit is. While trying to keep it simple.
So when I read that, that says to me that it's a different building, like a garage, upstairs of a garage or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, this definition doesn't specify,
What do you mean?
it doesn't specify if it's attached or separate.
It says a separate dwelling unit. Does that mean it could be in the same building?
There could be a demising wall between two units and still be separate. Could be separated by a demising wall.
Separate dwelling unit.
Right, I tried not to make it, right, it's just a separate dwelling unit. I tried not to make it so that it implied that it was a detached or,
Okay.
because I know
I understand,
for our accessory dwelling units, we're allowing them to be,
attached
Yeah.
to each other.
right,
Or detached.
correct.
With tiny house.
So what is the difference between
I have a question about this, accessory apartment.
Yeah, John,
It doesn't-
John,
Go ahead, that's
I'm sorry,
fine, that's
did I
fine.
miss something?
Peter,
Yeah,
you
go
gotta
ahead.
turn your hearing aids up.
John was in the middle of that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, I'll go after you.
Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry. I didn't catch
So when we have a, accessory apartment, it can only be so big and things like that, one bedroom. But then some of the text you added or you changed, we're talking about a single family and a two-family unit. It might be like a duplex where they could be the same size or something like that.
Correct.
So if someone were reading this, could they possibly get confused between accessory apartment and two-family dwelling?
Well,
And if you have a two-family dwelling, could you put an accessory, apartment on top of that? How would that work?
well, that's where I was trying,
No, because no lot shall contain more than one dwelling unit or more than two dwelling units within a dwelling unless approved as an accessory dwelling unit.
Which that? No,
We can't.
shall contain more than one dwelling unit.
because I was trying to attach the accessory dwelling unit to a single family dwelling unit. Not, so that you couldn't essentially have a accessory dwelling unit to a two-family.
So, does the state, is that okay?
I believe it's okay, because I don't think the intent is to have accessory dwelling units to two-family dwelling units. Because a
Right.
two-family is,
Then you're turning it into multifamily, which is
Right, because
completely
then it-
different building code.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's really. No,
Once you get into three or more.
Yeah.
it's different.
Dwelling units, now it's commercial building code, not international residential code.
and I don't believe you guys allow more than two.
Correct.
So you could either you could build a duplex if you wanted to. But if you had a single family, and you can't add a dwelling unit, an accessory apartment to that. But if you had a single family home, you could put it on that.
Right, if you have a single-family home, you could have an accessory dwelling unit. Because the accessory dwelling unit has to be essentially smaller than the single family. Or has to be less than the principal.
Well, it can be up to 1,000 square feet. Which, you could.
Right, and if you want it bigger than that, like you want it to be two equally sized units, well, then it's a two family, and then you apply for it as such.
Yeah, but here's the issue I have with it. You got a 2 acre lot, I got a house on it, 1,100 square feet, and I go on and put an accessory dwelling separate from the house, it doesn't have to be attached to the house.
Correct.
What do we do about septic and water?
Still gonna meet health department.
Well,
If you can't meet health department, you can't do it.
You can attach it to the existing
So it
system?
has to be approved by health department.
Right.
If health department doesn't approve it, then you
Yeah,
can't do it.
that's what the issues that you're gonna run into. And then,
That's up to the applicant though, that has nothing to do with us.
then why even apply for it if,
Because every situation's different, that's up to the applicant to determine if they
you got
can
a
meet or
2 acre
not.
lot, it ain't gonna, I don't see how you can make that fly. You gotta put in a separate septic system, separate electric.
No, you may.
You don't have to.
You don't have to yourself, they put a bigger tank in, bigger deal.
You know, that's what I'm saying, and if you don't have the reserve to do that,
Then you're out of luck.
then you're out of luck, that's right. I'd be doing a lot of research for it before I'd even be thinking about it. I mean, cause you can go up to a 1,000 square foot house on a 2 acre lot and another 1,100 that's existing. And then you got, say, 3 outbuildings, 4 outbuildings, and with a big garage. You can only cover so many square feet on a 2 acre lot, right?
Yeah.
I'd be doing a lot of research before I'd even be thinking about it. I mean, what do you think? I mean,
I'd
that's,
hire you to do the research for me.
huh?
I'd hire you to do the research for me.
Yeah,
No problem. I'm doing I do a lot now.
I know.
It's, I don't, when I found out you didn't have to have it attached to the house, that's what opened my eyes. Because now, like you say, you need a bigger septic system.
Well, even if you,
It doesn't matter.
you might need a bigger septic
Yeah.
system. Most houses are designed for 3-bedroom septic system.
Oh,
So
that's
if you
right.
had a 4th bedroom, you're gonna have to have a bigger system.
So you got 1,000, I think go up to, 1,000 gallon tank,
More than 3 bedrooms.
right?
Yeah.
1,000 gallon, already checked into it, 1,000 gallons. 3 bedroom.
Okay, but now you add a 4th bedroom. There is
Well, then it ain't gonna happen.
See, that's right. You gotta put
It
a
ain't gonna
bigger
happen,
tank in.
because now you,
There's so many different scenarios that this
Oh,
can
yeah.
happen. I've had clients who take a bedroom and they remove it as a bedroom from their house and then they add the accessory dwelling unit to make their 3rd bedroom. They turn a bedroom in their house into something else.
You mean just by putting furniture in it, or?
No, they have to, it has to comply with code. They have to move a door, no closet, open.
Okay, so there's, what kind of things define a bedroom?
A door and a closet.
Yeah.
And-
So if you take out the closet, it's only got one bedroom?
Wait, one bedroom? I have an old house.
Yeah, well, the health department has to accept it also.
Oh, okay, because they're saying you can do
Yes.
this because the septic system.
I recently had the health department deny one and say, no, it's not, we're still considering it bedroom, so
Okay.
too bad. Again, not anything that we have to worry about.
No,
That's true.
we just.
All we need to see is the health department approval here.
yeah, it's good before they do anything.
Yeah, that's all we have to do.
Yeah.
That's all we need. It's up to them to figure out how to get there.
Thank you. Well, you know, we're saying, one resident on 2 acre lot, 1 dwelling, don't go with the accessory.
There you go. All right. So, do we wanna be thinking about this one? Okay, just do a plan thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think eventually what we'll do, I may be speaking for Jim, but any of these changes we wanna make, if this one's good, okay, good, put it on the good pile, and then we'll do all of them together with one public hearing.
Correct, yeah.
Well, what I've been doing, I basically, as John had suggested, I've been making these changes all in one document now. So I'll just gonna, as we make the change, I'll just leave it all into one doc so that, and I'm only just printing out the pages, the changes in.
Yep.
That way, once you decide you're gonna go to a public hearing, it'll all be in one document and
Yeah, perfect. Can you email us this copy, the one with the direct changes?
I can, it's gonna be the full regulation though,
That's
with
fine.
all of it in it.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's good.
I think this simplifies that quite a bit, actually.
There's still a few things on our list that we need to address, right?
And you had mentioned, not that they're saying zoning things, but you had mentioned something regarding the, industrial park,
Yes.
that I was gonna get you some stuff for.
Right, so the industrial park has 54 acres they want to develop. So proposal, I think, a request for bids is gonna be going out. I don't know if it's gone out yet.
It's already out there.
Okay.
Is this that phase two?
Phase two.
Okay.
Of the industrial park.
I know it's-
So we talked a little bit about making that a separate zone in town. And there are many reasons for that.
Good time to do it.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Of course.
Obviously, right now, they have to go by these regulations, and they may not exactly make sense. I think Jim had a good point. I don't know if you would know, Link, or anything about water, sewage. And if we have a limit on how much sewage we can send to Plainfield.
We do.
We do, okay. And,
That would all have to be renegotiated with
So-
Plainfield.
that could be renegotiated. and-
Yeah, it's, yes.
We can buy an additional 10,000 gallons per day for a one-time fee for a set dollar amount each year of the contract. So the town can buy additional $10,000 of sewer per day for a set fee that we pay the town of Plainfield. It's a one-time fee. And that gives us an extra 10,000 gallons a day.
Okay,
It's substantial. It's 50-something thousand dollars, and it increases each year in the remainder of the contract, which.
In addition to the added sewer fee, any, development out there is gonna require extending the sewer line and the water line.
Right.
They run right now, both of them terminate right about at the old Tiber plant. And obviously you develop those 54 acres and they're gonna have to be additional lines run.
What do we use for sewage now? How many gallons?
What's that?
How many gallons do we use now?
Per day, it's 70.
How many gallons do we what?
How many gallons are we allowed per day? 48,
45,700 or something like that,
So this just gives us an extra
an
20%
extra 10.
or something.
How much do we actually
It'll
spend?
be a serious fee.
We've had some.
It's-
Really?
They
Who's on
measure,
that system, the residential?
it's residential and the industrial park.
Oh, so there's a whole bunch of houses on there too. We
Yeah.
don't know how much the industrial park uses.
No, we don't meter sewer. So even if they're on water, because some people are on sewer and not water, and vice versa, so we don't meter sewer like some towns do. It's not based on their water usage.
So
We have a fixed. fee.
so you said you're gonna put 15-some acres in the industrial park?
Before,
How many spots?
It hasn't been surveyed yet, John.
Yeah.
So we don't know how many would be allowed. There's also another opportunity up there, because there's another person who was thinking of buying, all of that. With just one, basically one proposition, one building site, if you will.
Is it that 53 acres, is that just the entire plant? Or is it-
No, that's in addition to the plat. That basically runs up the road beside the tire plant, goes behind it. That 54 acres actually takes in the water tank that the town uses for storage tank. Actually, obviously, that would have to be cut out of that land, but it hasn't been surveyed yet. That's what the RFP is all about, that they're gonna put together. But it will require some infrastructure without any, and electrical as well. Everything up there is underground.
yeah,
So the thought would be designate this as an industrial zone.
as in-
Is that what we'd be targeting? Yeah. I mean, that would be a good time to do it, because
Yeah.
you're putting regulations in place before anyone purchased the lot, so. There's no one to complain, and we can make it a good set of regulations that allows for. a good opportunity to
Exactly.
do, yeah.
So if you can find something, we'll take a look.
No, it's gonna be fairly quick.
Have economic development look at it as well, see if they have any concerns or issues with it.
They're holding on to having something come here.
Anything else? Yeah. All right, with that,
I make a motion that we adjourn.
thank you.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.